one loving. This is the heart of the whole thing for Eckhart. One seeing. He teaches us that seeing is important so that we know rightly, and that knowing is important only so that we can love. And finally, Eckhart would say, our whole life is meant as an opportunity to love. And the first poem we're going to look at, dealing with this, Eckhart would have talked about this with the phrase Wirklichkeit, and by that he meant the creating power of love, of God, of love, in and through everything that is. So he doesn't think of the creation as at the beginning. He thinks of the creation as happening right now. Right now. It's happening in your life and in mine. Right now is the first moment of the rest of your life. Right now is the only moment that you have. The only moment you have is now. The only moment we have is now. And because we only have this one moment extending through time, as much time as we have on this earth together and singly. So what does this have to do with creativity? I would say everything. Love is fundamentally the source of creativity. And creativity, for Eckhart, is the expression of love. It's the energy of love happening. Creativity is the energy of love happening. A little different than the E equals MC squared. The energy of love happening. And here's this first poem, which is a startler. Become love. If you want to know God, become love. If you want to know others, become love. If you want to know yourself, become love. And if you want to know love, forget all you thought you knew or needed to know and become love. Yes. Brings a little smile, doesn't it? Wonderful way of putting it. If you want to know God, don't read a book, go on a seminar about Meister Eckhart or anything else. This is great. It's been a wonderful day together. Really. An extraordinary day. The energy in this room is amazing. It's just, tomorrow it's going to be lingering in this place. Tomorrow at coffee hour, we'll all feel it, we who gather for coffee hour tomorrow. So it's amazing. But if you want to know God, become love. That's the call. Not love, become love for Eckhart. It's something else. Become love. If you want to know others, become love. If you want to know yourself, become love. And if you want to know love, forget all you thought you knew or needed to know and become love. Wow. There's really not much more needed here than this. Maybe that's what you can write. You've got on the top of your mirror, I am radiant. And over on the side, just say, become love. Become love. Become love in your family, in your neighborhood, with your friends, with people you like and the ones you don't like. That's especially where the call is urgent. With your friends and with your enemies, with those on this side of the wall and those on the other side. Become love. And when you think you can't love anymore, don't worry about what you think you can or can't do, and just become love. It's almost like a Zen koan, right? And maybe that can be on the side of your mirror, by the door. Become love. So here's this long, complicated story where we get the image of water running uphill. And it's a story that in Eckhart's day, one could not help but hear this and imagine a biblical story, which we'll talk about in a moment. Here's the story. No barrel can hold two different fluids. If it is to contain wine, then the water must be poured out so so that the barrel is quite empty. Therefore, if you wish to be filled with God and divine joy, then you must pour the creatures out of yourself. All the things you hold on to that you think you need to be who you are. All those creatures. I had a student, 19, her first semester at the university. Wonderful. She's been my teaching assistant for the last couple of years, my student assistant. And a young woman who came from a very small town near the university where I teach in Germany. And she had a pretty bad self-image. I mean, it was just clear. She couldn't really look up. She couldn't look me in the eye. She had a hard time in classes speaking. A brilliant woman, but she just doubted herself. You know, she doubted her worth. And she came to take the final oral exam at the end of the semester with me, and she brought a little stuffed unicorn, and she set it in front of her on the table. I didn't say anything. And she knocked the ball out of the park with her exam. It was incredible. She was just shining, and I just sat looking at her and smiling and saying, you're amazing. I don't think anybody ever said that to her. She finished her exam. I said, you know, there's good, there's better, and best. And there needs to be another category for you, because you've exceeded best. You know? And then I asked her, what's the unicorn for? Well, I always have that with me. That helps give me confidence. I said, well, that's fine, you know what? But you don't need the unicorn because you are the best there is. And it's interesting because she had to do another exam the next semester, oral exam. And I saw her, she was my student assistant, and I said, you know, Frau Borgschulte, we're on Mr. and Mrs. with students. Ms. Borgschulte, you have an exam coming up. Yep. What are you going to take into the exam with you? My confidence. I said, no unicorn? Nope. Zuversicht. My confidence. You are. Okay. If you wish to be filled with God and divine joy, you have to pour all the unicorns that you're holding on to, all the little stopgaps, all the little helps that you think you need, and you might from time to time. I didn't criticize her, actually. I thought this was weird. I'd never had a student come and put a stuffed animal between us. I mean, it was very clearly, this unicorn was looking right at me and he was not friendly. He was not friendly. I had a horn sticking at me. He could impale me. And I just knew enough to say, don't say anything. Just keep your mouth shut, Mom. And because I knew that she could do this, and she did. She did it so beautifully. But she was holding on to that creature. That was her creature. And we all have those things. Something that we hold on to that we think we need. A wonderful book by Henry Nouwen, whom many of you will know. He wrote a book in the 1980s called With Open Hands. A little book with pictures. And who was Henry Nouwen? He was a Dutch priest who came to the United States and taught at Yale and then left to teach at Harvard, and was never really very satisfied with the academic world. He was loved by students, which means he was hated by most of his colleagues because he was so popular. I mean, they couldn't find halls big enough for Henry Nouwen when he lectured at Yale and later at Harvard. And he eventually left Harvard and joined a large community in Canada, spent the last year of his life living and serving people living with disabilities, and really found his joy. But he wrote this book called With Open Hands, and he was, during his Yale years, he was a visitor at a psychiatric wing of a hospital for people with serious mental illnesses. And he tells a story at the beginning of the book of a woman who was brought into the psychiatric ward raging, a schizophrenic person, which is just a tag we put on a form of mental illness. And her hands were clenched so tightly that the orderlies couldn't get her hands open. And it took days, finally, until they could coax her to open her hands. And what she had was just a little coin. But for her, that was all of her self-worth. and he uses this image as a way of saying, it's easy to say we should live with open hands. But much of the time, we're clutching something that we're desperately afraid to lose because we're afraid we'll lose ourselves. It may be a job we hold, a relationship we hold, a status that we hold in the community. And we hold on to that thinking we can't live without it, and it's taken from us. And the question is, what next? Wonderful story by the novelist, the Southern novelist, Reynolds Price. Some of you will know his writings, taught for many years at Duke University. And he was afflicted with a fatal illness, a cancer, in the middle of his life that left him a quadriplegic, from the treatments. And he wrote a book about the experience called A Whole New Life. I commend it to you, Reynolds Price, A Whole New Life. Which is an ironic title because the wholeness of his life was apparently taken away. He couldn't walk, he couldn't move his arms, he couldn't write anymore in the way he long had written, using his hands. He continued to write, and his life was saved. And he said, the miracle for me, and I remember this 30 years after reading it for the first time, like he was speaking to me this morning. The miracle was that I didn't ask why this happened to me. The miracle was that the only question that emerged for me is, what next? An amazing testimony. What next? What can I do with my life now? All these things have been taken away. Many of us would become bitter or incapacitated, despairing, rightly so. That would be a natural response. And Reynolds Price said the miracle was somehow a voice came to him. He said it was the voice of Jesus. He's not a particularly conventionally religious person, but he said he heard this voice coming to him saying, Reynolds, what's next? What's next for you? Look forward. Look forward. The water must be poured out so the barrel is quite empty. So if you want to have wine within you, you have to pour everything out. Otherwise, there's no room for the wine. If you wish to be filled with God and divine joy, you must pour the creatures out of yourself. As St. Augustine said, St. Augustine is a church father living almost 1,000 years earlier, at the beginning of the end of the Roman Empire, the 4th and early 5th century. As St. Augustine said, pour out so that you may be filled. And in this most remarkable statement, learn not to love in order that you may learn to love. Learn not to love in order that you may learn to love. Turn away so that you may be turned toward. If anything is to be receptive, it must become empty. Possessing nothing, being naked, poor and empty, transforms nature. Emptiness draws water uphill and causes many other miracles. It's an extraordinary claim. I imagine if I were to hear that claim in one of Uta's sermons or in church where I was hearing someone preach, I wouldn't be able to hear anything more that they said because I would probably be thinking about this. What does it mean to learn not to love in order that you may learn to love? What do you think? What does it mean to learn not to love so that you may learn to love? How would you describe that? What's he saying? Yes?
What I hear is I have my way of loving. I must unlearn that.
Yes.
So that whatever way to
Yes.
love shows up,
Yes.
I can be available.
Beautiful. What you hear is, I have to unlearn my way of loving so that I can open myself to discovering a new way of loving. Is that a fair summary? Beautiful. I think that's right. I mean, in a way, there's not a right or wrong answer. Augustine puts forward this enigma, this puzzle to us, and says, figure it out yourself. What does it mean to learn not to love so that you can learn to love? And I would say, without a lot of experience, I'm not a trained therapist, but good therapists help us learn the dysfunctions in our loving, what we think of as our loving, so that we can let go of those dysfunctions and learn to love truly. It may be learning to let go of the unicorn that we stick on the desk. And she said to me, every exam I took in the gymnasium, in high school, I always had this, and I always succeeded. And I said, that's great that you did that. But you know, without the unicorn, you would have succeeded today. Because you were brilliant. Utterly brilliant. Never heard an exam like this one. Been doing this for almost 40 years. This is so astounding. So, learning to let go, to empty ourselves of patterns that we think are helping us, that may be crippling us, that may be wounding us and maybe wounding others. You know, it's a very helpful thing for someone honestly to say, Mark, you think that you're saying a loving thing right now, but you're hurting me. Or you're hurting yourself. So, again, if there's a theme that's woven through the day, it's self-help is never enough. We need each other to discover how to love. We can't do that by ourselves. Because love, by its definition, isn't a self-help project. Someone needed to mirror to Frau Borgschulte that she was brilliant, is brilliant. Just happened to be on that day me. But I'm sure others before me had been saying the same thing to her. Right? And inviting her to let go of the unicorn, the creature that she was holding on to. Because she felt she needed that to succeed. But she didn't. And I tell you, she's blooming now. The woman's unstoppable. I've never seen anything quite like it. She just charges into the most difficult classes. No worries. I'll take on Mr. Boyshaw, Professor Boyshaw. He doesn't frighten me. He doesn't scare me. Everybody else is terrified of the guy. She just says, bring him on. I don't even need the unicorn. Okay. Learn not to love in order that you may learn to love. Empty yourself so that you can create anew. So that theme of emptying, becoming emptiness, that we were looking at this earlier in the afternoon, is the bedrock for Eckhart's understanding of love as creativity. And let's see how this manifests in a poem. Don't work so hard. You know, that's such good advice. Uta was reminding me what I was going toward with the story about my father, who always had a hard time receiving, but is so generously in giving. And he's now really in the world of deep dementia, and he doesn't really recognize always who we are and doesn't remember who he was. But when you come in to see him, he's always happy to see you. And I'll tell him, I'm your son. Oh, that's wonderful, he'll say. That's wonderful. When I was there 6 months ago for 5 or 6 days a week with my parents, and I was leaving early one morning, and he had to get, my mother, he was still living with her at home. He's now in a separate unit. My mom couldn't handle it anymore, but she woke him up and said, you know, Bob, Mark is leaving. And he said to her, Marion, he's such a wonderful young man. Do we know his parents? You know, and you can only laugh and cry at the same time, right? But what Uta was reminding me of, what I was trying to say, is when you come in to see him, the one thing he'll ask is, can I help you? Can I do something for you? And he can't feed himself anymore. But can I do something for you? Is there anything you need? He'll ask. Is there anything you need? Right? It's really quite extraordinary. When you get to that point of emptiness, when that goodness shines forth, you're lucky. It doesn't always happen that way with dementia. But when it does, you realize what a gift is present to you in this place where there's nothing else possible. And you laugh and you cry, and you cry and you laugh. With gratitude. At the heart of things is an eternal present. Don't work so hard. You know, don't work so hard. At the heart of things is an eternal present moment, which is in each and every thing that is. This is Eckhart. Modern theologians have taken this thought the eternal now. Paul Tillich wrote a book about it famously, a wonderful book of sermons, The Eternal Now. At the heart of things as an eternal present moment, which is in each and everything that is, and in me, and in you. And when we let ourselves come into an awareness of this now, we come to know ourselves as a becoming new without renewal. That's right out of Eckhart. But there is a becoming new that's not about renewing something, which is about making the new in the past present again, right? Renewing, newing again. Eckhart says, no. The creative love is not about recovering something that you used to have and bringing it up to date. It's about something completely new happening that you don't know about yet because it's not yet real, but it's happening. Wirklichkeit. The reality is happening in your life right now. This becoming new. The question is, do you have eyes to see it? Do you have eyes to see it? And if you can see it, can you have eyes to see it in the one who's across from you? The most important person, like God writes, is the one facing you right now. The one who's over against you. And the most important moment is now. And the most important thing is love. That's the quote from the book we saw earlier. When we let ourselves come into awareness of this now, we come to know ourselves as a becoming new without renewal. And this is the truth beyond all our worries and needs and hopes, this one eternal present moment, which is all we've got. All there is. I think we just lost batteries. Yeah, that's all there is. So I'll raise my voice here. Because this sense of God as the eternal now means that you are part of that. God can't happen without you being you and me being me. That's God. That's how Eckhart understands God. God is this love happening in and through us and everything that is, all of the time, everywhere. Don't work so hard. Well, in a way, let go of your compulsive need to manage the world and be the radiance you are. And seek the radiance in others that they are. And Uta, I think someone told me there are batteries up in the front. Here, you've got them.
There may be two.
So, let's have somebody read this for us. Who can read this poem? Would you read?
At the heart of things is an eternal present moment, which is in each and everything that is, and in me and in you. And when we let ourselves come into an awareness of this now, we come to know ourselves as a becoming new without renewal. And this is the truth beyond all our worries and needs and hopes. This one eternal present moment.
Oh, I love the way you read that. The last line, this one eternal present moment. That's the heart of Eckhart's vision of reality. That there is nothing but this present moment. There was a present moment that's the past, in our past. And there will be a present moment in our future. But the only present moment that is now, right here. And that's why he says, don't try to renew yourself. Because if you try to renew yourself, you're trying to discover something about your past that is gone. You're becoming new right now. In your 40th year, in your 50th year, in your 60th year, in your 70th year, one of you is 92. 92. And right now, you are, Joyce, you are becoming new. At 92. It's the same gift that years younger, and I and others here. Each of us is given this one eternal present moment, which Eckhart called the eternal now. And that eternal now is the eternal possibility of newing, not renewing, of newing. N-E-W-I-N-G. In another poem, I think that we use that phrase. How do we new the world, our life? Not the world. How do you new your life? What would it mean to new your life? It's a wonderful image. It's an awkward word. And you have to kind of see it on the page because it doesn't make sense to us. To use new as a verb. New is not a verb. But it can become a verb. To new your life is to realize that this moment is the possibility of your discovering your radiance. And from that discovery, to open yourself to the radiance all around you, in everything that is, in every creature, in everything. Eckhart says every piece of wood, every tree, every creature bears this newing power. He even thought stones were alive. And in fact, we're finally catching up with that. That stones do have a low energy threshold, right? They're not absolute. There is no absolute solid in this world. Everything is in flux. So, there's this poem. The truth beyond all our worries and needs and hopes. And hopes. And here I think is the hardest edge for us. Letting go of what we hope for, what we expect, which is a way of, in a way, controlling what we hope will happen, what we anticipate in the world, letting go of that. Here's one more longer quote, also on your sheet. And this is another one of Eckhart's new words. He loved making up words. In German, you can make up words. In fact, there's a website that looks for the longest word in German. And it's pretty funny. If you just string words together, you can do this in German in a way you can in English. Cannot in English. But one of the words is innerlichkeit. It didn't exist yet. This inner working. Innerlich. Something that's this sort of inside. The interior energy that's happening all the time in everything that is. There is an inner work of God, which neither time nor space can support or contain, and in which there is something divine and akin to God, and which similarly is beyond time and space. This is a guy writing in the early 14th century. There's something beyond time and space. It's amazing. There's something beyond all of these categories that we think are absolute categories that define the world around us, the world of which we participate. There must be something more inward and elevated than our virtue, our power, our strength. Something uncreated, with neither dimension nor mode of being, on which our Heavenly Father can imprint himself, pouring himself forth, and in which he can reveal himself as Son and Holy Spirit. Also, we cannot impede the interactivity of virtue any more than we can impede God. This activity shines out day and night. It extols God, praising him and singing a new song. This is an amazing quote. And probably if you came upon this at the beginning of the day, you'd probably say, I think I need to take care of something at home. I think this may be a little strange. But perhaps by now you start to see what there is to this worth carrying forth. There's an inner work of God, which we can't see. We can't see it. It's not in time, and it's not in space, but it's always in everything that is, in everything, in your life, in my life, in every life, and in all inanimate things, and in all creatures, Eckhart would say, that God is a promiscuous, indiscriminate lover who gives God's self to everything that is. And I think if Eckhart lived in our day, he'd say, galaxies, universes. Wow. That's how big the energy is. It's so incredible, isn't it? That we can say that we're part of a solar system in a galaxy. Uta was giving me were you giving that statistic? How big is a galaxy in the talk on Thursday night? Thousands of light years, billions of stars in our galaxy. Billions? Can that be? My older brother, an astrophysicist, can talk endlessly about this, and incredible, about what it is to imagine how immense the world is. Eckhart would not have been deterred by this. He would have been amazed by it. And he would have said, how remarkable that we can think about this on this little planet, in this little solar system, spinning within a galaxy, in something we call, with sheer credulity, the universe, expanding at an unfathomable rate from what point of energy into what point of energy. And Eckhart would simply say, well, this is the creativity that is God. Not in a doctrinal way, not in a dogmatic way, not that religion has to tell science that after all this is God. Eckhart would say, well, you don't have to say anything about this. This energy is, in a sense, hidden from us. Neither time nor space can support or contain, and in which there is something divine and akin to God, and which is beyond time and space. There must be something more inward and elevated than our virtue. There must be something more than my actions. There must be. There must be something more than your life, as crucial as it is for you and those who depend upon you. There's something bigger happening that you're part of. You're part of it. You're woven into this expanding universe. That's probably what Eckhart would have said had he been confronted with the new science, that every moment in our life is part of this unfolding energy of matter. There must be something more inward and elevated than our virtue, something uncreated, with neither dimension nor something uncreated. You see how radical this is? Not something made. It's something unmade. It's something not yet made. In your life, he's saying, and mine. With neither dimension nor mode of being. He's groping here. He doesn't have words for it. He's saying there's something so amazing about the energy coursing through everything that is, that we cannot imagine it. On which our Heavenly Father, when God can imprint God's self, pouring God's self forth, and in which God can reveal God's self as Son and Spirit. And Eckhart would say, where do you want to find that? But in your own life. You are the beloved daughter. You are the beloved Son, in whom God is well pleased. You are the incarnation of this energy in your life. And I in my life. And we in our life. And we can't impede the interactivity of this power, this virtue, this power, any more than we can impede God. It is irresistible. It is unmanageable. It is there in the birthing of the season of spring. Our neighbors are tapping their maple trees. I wondered why I thought they put all these metal things against our property line, and then I realized this morning, they're tapping the trees. How wonderful is that? That they're aware that the life is beginning to surge up again. You can't see it, but on the warmer days, the sap is rising. On the colder nights, it's falling. New Englanders know all about this. This is the energy of the divine, happening in such ordinary ways. Well, what does this lead to? I love this last part. This activity shines out day and night. It's shining out in everything that is. It's not just about you and me. The radiance is everywhere. It's in everything that is. It extols God, and then this wonderful phrase, praising God and singing a new song. That's what's happening today. Did you know that? That all of creation is singing a new song. Praising God, just in being itself. A tree is praising God, Thomas Merton famously wrote, by being a tree. Right? A bird is praising God by being a bird. And you are invited to praise God simply by being you. You don't need words. You don't need doctrine, dogma, formulations of faith. Be who you are. The rest will follow. Ever shining light. Some days it seems the whole world is tilting the wrong way. Right? It's just true. Some days it seems the whole world is tilting the wrong way. It might be up, but I am somehow down, and right is always somewhere else against my wrong. And then you remind me that within me burns an ever-shining light, which no night or stumbling down can ever fully dim or finally smite. That's such a saving poem. Could someone read this for us? Maybe someone in the back, so we can hear your voice all the way to the front. Can you read, Tom? Big voice. Like, I'm going to give you the mic.
Thank you.
I may not need it. I guess everybody does.
Some days, it seems the whole world is tilting the wrong way. It might be up, but I'm somehow down, and right is always somewhere else against my wrong. And then you remind me that within me burns an ever-shining light. An ever-shining light which no night or stumbling down can ever fully dim or finally smite.
That's great. I think that's what a word. We've lost the word smite. You know, but somehow it's unavoidable in this poem at that point. It's like, this is just deep wisdom from Eckhart. This is, in a sense, this is not psychology. He didn't understand it as psychology. He wouldn't have understood it as psychology. He would have understood this as reality. This is reality. This is what is real about the ever-newing life that you are offered each moment of every day, of every week, of every month, of every year, every decade of your life. And today, for the first time, and for the only time today, right now, this is your gift. Let's hear it read from the very back of the room. Somebody read it from the back? Yes? Wait.
Some days it seems the whole world is tilting the wrong way. It might be up, but I am somehow down, and right is always somewhere else against my wrong. And then you remind me that within me burns an ever-shining light, which no night or stumbling down can ever fully dim or finally smite.
Oh, you read that so beautifully, that last word, smite. Or finally smite. This is almost a kind of confession of faith, in a sense. If the poems that we were reading at the beginning were poems of hope, these are poems of deep faith that remind us that our life is always a possibility of the new at every moment. No matter how dark the night seems, or how dim our life seems, that nothing can smite that ever-shining light. Let's hear it in one more poem. Oh, we've got another quote coming. And this is the last long quote. All of these are on the sheet that you have. It's the very last one. We should learn to derive great profit from everything, whatever they may be, wherever we may be, Whatever we see or hear, and however alien and strange to us they are. This is so important in Eckhart's thought. Don't look for the extraordinary moment, because it will never come. Don't look for the mountaintop experience, where finally you will have revealed to you the meaning of your life. It will never come. Look at the moment you have right now. Because that moment, however difficult or beautiful, however dark or light, is the only moment you have to discover the radiance that you are. So this is Eckhart. We should learn to derive great profit from everything, from all things, whatever they may be, wherever we may be, whatever we see or hear, and however alien and strange to us they are. What a manifesto. It is then and only then that we are in the right state of mind, when we learn to derive great profit from everything. And no one can come to the end of this process, but rather we should grow in it without end, and come to achieve ever more. We should make good use of our thoughts in all our works and in all things, and have a clear understanding of ourselves and our inner nature, grasping the divine in all things, and in the highest possible manner. So we too should consciously look out for the Lord in all things. This demands much effort, and must cost us all that our senses and faculties are capable of. But this is the right thing to do, so that we grasp God in the same way in all things, and find God equally everywhere. That's incredible. That's a remarkable claim. In a sense, Eckhart is saying, this is not easy. This is not going to be easy. It's very simple, but it is not easy to remember that in everything that happens, God is. In everything that happens, love is somehow there. Not in the immediate moment, not to fix the tragedy, or to spare the train wreck, or to prevent the Holocaust. We inflict that pain on each other, often mercilessly. But Eckhart would say that cannot erase radiance from the world. The book that changed my life as a young person, I was in college, and my junior year, a famous American church historian came to do the baccalaureate at our commencement at Lawrence University in Wisconsin. He was the father of one of my classmates who was graduating that year, a guy named Joel Marty, and the man was Martin Marty. And he became a friend over the years, fellow church historian, one of the most generous people I've ever met. I could tell you stories about some of my encounters with Martin Marty. The funniest was he came to the seminary where I was teaching my first position in Washington, D.C., and he said, well, he was coming to honor my retiring colleague, a fellow historian. And he said, I would love to come, but I have to do a 60-minute interview with Tom Brokaw, and could we film that in your office? I said, well, of course, that's not a problem. So CBS shows up, and they went to the front desk and they said, we're looking for Dr. Burrows' office. And my stock went up on that campus. Tom Brokaw coming to my office with CBS cameras. And the news got around like wildfire. This young junior professor is going to be on 60 Minutes. Amazing. Yes, exactly. Anyway, the interview went along and it was fine. But why do I mention Martin Marty? Oh, at that commencement, he said there's a book that all of you should read, one of the most important books of our time, by a man named Viktor Frankl, called Man's Search for Meaning. That's the English translation. The Human Search for Meaning. And if you know the book, you know why it's a book that changes lives. Viktor Frankl survived the Holocaust and writes a book about the power of hope in the lives of those who were in this desperate situation, and realized that those who had something to hope for got a much higher prospect of surviving the horror than others had given up. and devoted his life as a therapist to developing what he called logotherapy, which some of you will know a lot about. There are therapists in this room, which is a way of encouraging people to see the possibility in their life rather than the limitation. And in a way, it's conversant with the kinds of things Eckhart was talking about in his own way, in his own day. No one can come to the end of this process. We don't get to an end of this process. Eckhart would say not even in death. We're still discovering more about this reality, this Wirklichkeit, this creativity that's happening in and through everything that is. It's an inner work. It's an inner work that's happening in everything and in your life. But you have to open yourself to it. This is why I mentioned Frankel. You have to open yourself to that possibility. And you can do that, as difficult as it might be. No one could write this who had not experienced what Frankel wrote and have any credibility. But somehow when I read that book, I was 20 years old. It changed something in me. I've never forgotten it. I still have that little paperback I bought for $2.20 or whatever it was. That was dog-worn. I carried that with me for years, reading it and rereading it, about the power of what it means to believe against all of the pressures of evil surrounding us. So here's the poems, 2 poems, and then we'll summarize. Where are you? Where are you? If you want to find God, give up thinking you know where God is and how you should find God. If you want to find God, give up thinking you know where God is and how you should find God, and give yourself to all the things in your life where God always already is. And if you have God in this way, you'll find God in everything and miss God in nothing. For God is in everything, and God misses nothing. And when you find God in this way, everything becomes God for you. Wow. And Eckhart would go on to say, and you become God. You become that power of God in the world. And each of us is invited to become, Eckhart would say, God. This got him in trouble. You can imagine that the bishop didn't really want to hear somebody saying this. Because without a proper understanding, you could say, well, that's blasphemous. That you are God? You're going to become God? That's ridiculous. That's utter foolishness. And Eckhart would say, exactly. It's foolishness to the wisdom of the world. But it's wisdom to those who understand. One last poem. Give me words that sing. Give me words that sing. It's on page 163, the Book of the Heart. This is a bit of a longer poem, and it's our final poem. Teach me, I pray, to see the small, unnoticed things in my life. You know, we all want a big epiphany, don't you? You want a big revelation, don't you? You want big love in your life, you want big happiness. I do. But that desire for big love, big happiness, big success is like the little stuffed unicorn. It's really not just unnecessary, it's in the way. It's in the way. Teach me, I pray, see the small, unnoticed things in my life, close to my reach and deeper than my eye alone can teach. The wisdom we need is not far away. It's not anywhere else. It's not in Meister Eckhart. It's not in Meister Burrows or Meister Molitor, my pastor. It's not in any one place. It's in every place. It's in you, and it is in me. Show me with the steady measure of a poet's gaze what it means to seek words that are pleasing and alive as the dance is to those tired legs and knees. Show me with the steady measure of a poet's gaze what it means to seek words that are pleasing and alive as the dance is to those with tired legs and knees. Give me words that sing against the darkest nowhere hour, ones full of enough silence to be rich in the spin of every now and alive to the tremble of each here. I'd like to hear a couple of you read this.
Give me words that sing. Teach me, I pray, to see the small, unnoticed things in my life, close to my reach and deeper than my eye alone can teach. Show me with the steady measure of a poet's gaze what it means to seek words that are pleasing and alive as the dance is to those with tired legs and knees. Give me words that sing against the darkest nowhere hour, ones full of enough silence to be rich in the spin of every now and alive to the tremble of each here.
Thanks. Pass the microphone back to somebody else. One more reading from the back. Thank you, Jim. This poem.
Teach me, I pray, to see the small, unnoticed things in my life, close to my reach and deeper than my eye alone can teach. Show me with the steady measure of a poet's gaze what it means to seek words that are pleasing and alive as the dance is. I'm sorry, I meant to come forward. To those with tired legs and knees, give me words that sing against the darkest nowhere hour, ones full of enough silence to be rich in the spirit of every good now, of every now, and alive to the tremble of each here.
Beautiful. Let's hear it one more time. Someone? In the front here?
Give me words that sing. Teach me, I pray, to see the small, unnoticed things in my life, close to my reach and deeper than my eye alone can teach. Show me with the steady measure of a poet's gaze what it means to seek words that are pleasing and alive, as the dance is to those with tired legs and knees. Give me words that sing against the darkest nowhere hour, ones full of enough silence to be rich in the spin of every now and alive in the tremble of each here.
Oh, thank you. It's wonderful to hear poems read. You know, to hear the inflection of each voice, which teases out something a little different. And I leave this for us as a way of gathering what we've been doing today. That this has not been a day about big monumental discoveries. It's been about the small steps needed to find our way back to who we are, to find our way back to the radiance that is within each of us and in all creatures and all people and all things. And to trust that the way we discover that most profoundly is by emptying ourselves of our need to be important and knowing and busy and purposeful and all those things, so that we can avail ourselves, open ourselves to receive the gift that we are and that others are, in and for us and for the world in which we live. We've never needed this wisdom more than we do at this, I think, imperiled time in our nation's struggle to live as a community that cares for one another and that is willing to sacrifice our privileges for the needs of the communities in which we live. So, is this esoteric wisdom from a mystic from the 14th century? No. This is utterly down to earth, ready to experience a word that opens us, I think, to, as this poem puts it, to have enough silence to be rich in the spin of every now and alive to the tremble of each here and now. In the ordinary lives that we live, we're given a gift of immense beauty and radiance, which is entrusted to us so that we might know the world and know our own life for the sake of our common humanity on this imperiled, fragile, beautiful place we call the earth. Thank you for a wonderful day together. Thank you so much. A wonderful day. Thank you.
Yeah, fine, sit just for a second. Yeah, I want to thank you all for coming, and you've shared a lot, and for all your openness. I want to thank all who helped today, and certainly you, Mark, because I think you also found this beautiful balance between being both teacher, preacher, prophet, and pastor, all in one somehow. So thank you for that. I wanted to mention Mark is actually leading a retreat in Spain this fall on beauty and how beauty can also recover goodness and our connectivity to ourselves, to all. So if that's of interest to you, you might want to explore that. And we are already plotting potential trips for next year and other opportunities. Did want to mention, someone reminded me, we have a Lectio Divina group here at the church which practices the pondering and the silence and the letting go. So if you're interested in that, we do that on Tuesdays at 1:30, so that's open to anyone who would like to continue this kind of being with words. But just to close, I thought maybe let's just even take 3 slow breaths together and then give a brief closing prayer. Most gracious and ever-present God, we pray that we may learn to be emptied enough, that we may be filled with confidence, with this faith in our given radiance and our shared belonging in you, that we may dare to ask together what next, and help each other to love, to see the possibility, so that all things may be nude